The tire change was taking longer than Dan expected. His arms were beginning to cramp from holding the flashlight steady. "If I were a straight guy," Jordan said, "this would be a total turn-on." He took off his thick, fashionable glasses and wiped at his nose and forehead with his arm. "Then not for the first time. I'm glad you're not straight," Dan said. "Jordan, you could at least try to help." "I just get in the way," he said. Abby gave a tiny grunt of effort, wrenching off another of the blown tire's lug nuts. "Good thing that car only weighs about 16 pounds max," Jordan added. This was met with a swift, blind kick from Abby, who was now pressed up against the car's faded electric green chassis. "At least one of us knows how to change a freaking tire," she shot back. Her forearms and face were streaked with war paint lines of grease and dirt. "Thanks, Mr. Valdez," Dan said, crouching to see what she was working on. She had at least managed to maneuver the replacement into alignment. The only thing left to do was tighten the nuts on the spare. "Thanks, Mrs. Valdez," Abby countered. "She's the one who insisted I learn this before even considering a road trip." "Here," Dan offered, holding out his hand for the wrench. "Let me finish this." "Are you sure?" she asked. She puffed back a wisp of purple hair. She had dyed a few streaks at the beginning of summer, and now her naturally black hair was encroaching down toward the roots. "I think I can handle it," Dan said. "Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey? Anyway, the blood is running out of my arms. You take the flashlight." They changed places, Dan kneeling next to the car, while Abby positioned the flashlight to shine down onto his head and the tire. Tightening the tire onto the car was harder work than he expected, and he had to grip the wrench with both hands to gather enough force. Finally, he had to lower the car jack so he could finish. "Wow, Jordan is right," Abby said. "That is kind of a turn-on." Dan blushed, ruffling his hair shyly. "I think we're good to go. Let's get this stuff in the trunk and get back to the diner, yeah? I'm starving." "If you insist," Jordan said with a sigh, helping Dan pack up the flashlight and toolkit. "At this point, I'd prefer McDonald's. That mechanic was just a little too eager to help." "I think he was nice," Abby said, climbing back into the driver's seat. "Ugh, careful," Jordan replied with a shudder. "I wouldn't let him hear you say that." When they returned to the diner, the atmosphere once again became quiet, almost chilly. Jake Lee was nowhere to be found, but the lights were still out in the garage next door, so Dan held on to the flashlight. The service at the mutton chop was slow, although apparently not for the other tables. Dan watched platters of food come and go, but the only thing that had made it to their table was a cup of coffee for Abby, delivered by a man whose name tag read Fats Buckhill. Dan hadn't even gotten his water yet. Abby tapped her ringed fingers on the surface of the table and offered a friendly smile whenever Mr. Fats, the owner/waiter/horror movie extra, hobbled by the table, but he just kept saying, "I'll be right with you." To be fair, for almost 9 p.m., the diner was surprisingly busy. Dan could swear every local in the joint was staring at them, but whenever he turned to see, they whipped back around, suddenly very interested in their food. "This is how it starts," Jordan hissed, leaning in to get closer to Dan. Abby ignored him. "First that mechanic. There's always the one gruff yokel who warns you or has that hee-haw donkey laugh, and then